the very first webinar that we will have in a series of high impact common services. The webinar on innovation and digital services will be part of the series as well, but there has been a little bit of confusion in the Microsoft Teams links. But we're glad to have many colleagues who has joined us this morning here in New York and at whatever time you are in your region. We will be presenting to you the high impact common services that has been identified within the BOSS for scaling to all possible bosses globally. And today the team from the DCO CBS country business strategy of the UN Development Coordination will be presenting this webinar to you on behalf of the UNSDG task team. During this webinar, we'll introduce you to the high impact common services, and then we'll also share with you the way forward and what can be done for countries that already have their BOSSes completed or those that are still in the process of developing the BOSS. So in the webinar today, the key speaker for us will be Lars Tushuizen, who is the chief of the country business strategy team in the UNDCO. Most of you might already know him or be familiar with Lars. Lars will take us over the key slides in this presentation in the webinar, and then we'll be talking to you more and more. So let me stop there and hand over the slide and the floor to Lars. Lars, Diego is managing the slides, so please feel free to speak up and ask to change the slides as and when necessary. Thank you.
Sure, Zamir. Good morning, colleagues, or good afternoon, or good evening even for some of you. My name is Lars Tushuizen. I'm the Chief of Branch and DCO for the Country Business Strategy Branch. We deal with pretty much anything to do with the efficiency agenda, the business operations reform of the Secretary General. Today we're looking a little bit forward on the BOS. As more and more countries are progressing with their BOS and have signed off in most cases on their BOS. We want to give you a bit of a perspective. Okay, so what's next? We've done our BOS, we did our analytics and of course benefit analysis, and we got the set of services. So what can we expect moving forward? Colleagues, can I kindly ask you to please mute your microphone? I'm getting a bit of white noise from one of the microphones. Thank you. So we want to give you a bit of a sense of what that moving forward looks like. We've been working with New York University, analyzing some of the BOSS frameworks, some of the countries that have had BOSSes for a while, and adding a few other countries to that. And we've been looking at, okay, what BOSSes, what we want out of the BOSS, what countries, what are the trends we're seeing in terms of services within the BOSS. And what you'll increasingly see, over time, we will keep on analyzing the different.
Yes, we can hardly hear you. A lot of colleagues are writing in the chat. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, my apologies, Aneta. Not entirely sure.
I'm sorry, we can hear you well. Maybe the issue with the connection or other. This is from Senegal. We can hear you pretty well. Whatever connection is on the other side.
Okay, thank you, Raul. I heard it as well when we started. I heard Zami perfectly fine as well. I'm sorry, Annette. I'm not entirely sure what to do about it. Let me proceed. Let me change one of my sound settings and see whether I can do anything on my side.
We can hear you well, Lars.
Okay.
At this end, thank you.
We can hear you well too.
Okay, then allow me to proceed, please, because we've got a lot of people in the meeting, and I don't want to waste people's time with the logistics. Annetta, we are recording it, so that's probably a backup option. So anyway, as I was saying, so we will continuously analyze different BOSSes. You got different countries have different services, testing out different solutions that they feel add value for them in their country. And we will be closely monitoring both the cost avoidance generated by those services as well as the quality. Does it increase speed? Does it have social impact that we're after? So we will, as DCO, but supporting the task team on the BOS and the CBO of the UNSDG, we will continuously look at these countries and track them to see what the actual impact is. Does the impact materialize? And over time, as we go along, we'll have an increasing set of services that have proof of concept that, okay, these do work well, and not just in one country, but probably work well in other contexts as well. And we will start talking to you about it. We will ask those countries come and speak about what you've done and how this actually works for you. This is, we have an initial set of services already prepared. That's what we're going to talk about today and in the coming webinars. So we will show you a little bit what this looks like. Diego, can you go to the first slide, please? So there's different, when you talk about the BOS, when we say impact, as opposed to maybe earlier times, currently impact is quite well defined, in particular for the business operations, right? When we say high impact, what we're saying, either the service reduces our cost avoidance, we call that, right? Or we have a quality impact, and quality impact is a bit wider. Quality impact could be that it's faster, that it's more responsive to the needs of the client, that you get better goods or commodities or services better meeting your needs. So those are quality indicators, but it also includes social impact. And what we mean by social impact, it is something that personally is very close to my heart, is that it's apart from the money, which of course is very important, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a key driver for the BOS, but it does something in terms of the contributing to the social cohesion in the country. That could be women's empowerment. That could be empowering people with disabilities, right? That could be climate, the carbon footprint reduction. Things that are not necessarily the money in your pocket, but things that ultimately, arguably, are equally, if not more important. So that is how we define high impact services, services that on any of these areas have a demonstrated impact. So today, this webinar will give you a bit of an overview what came out of the New York University report. I strongly recommend you check the report. It's quite well written. And it will give you a lot of the data that I don't have time to go into detail on today. And Zamir and Diego will distribute that report. Also, a quick shout out to Diego and Zamir's team, who have been working tirelessly to get that report out. That was not a simple lift, so well done. So what we will do is we will talk about the observations of our own analytics. On the other hand, and you see that in the slide in front of you, we will also give a soapbox, if you wish, to the different agencies who have services up and running that have proven their merit already. Some things sometimes it's not the UN country teams who have services and come up with a new and very, very useful service. Sometimes things are already in place. It's just a matter that people don't know. Examples include the humanitarian booking hub from WFP and UNHCR. Gender responsive procurement, where we've been working with UN Women, disability inclusion, which is a thing from all of us, but which currently has been pushed very hard by the Secretariat and the Secretary General as well. Green energy services, again, another one that's close to my heart, that carbon footprint reduction, really cool things with UN buildings being solar powered, but also examples of UN buildings that are the center of a microgrid for the communities around our building. So a business operations service becomes programmatic impact because it's powering the neighborhood around the buildings. So much more advanced services than just a tick box like, okay, let's share our pouch, if you wish, which is also a very important service, don't get me wrong. And last but not least, a sustainable cafeteria. When I presented this to a colleague of mine, was saying, okay, so how is that strategic? You'll be surprised. I've said in the presentation, this is from Copenhagen. It is quite amazing. It's more about staff, lifestyle, and welfare, and they wrap that around their cafeteria concepts, and it's quite well done. So we will give these entities the opportunity to speak. They will talk to you, tell you what it is about. How do you do this? Each of these services will have, and Zamir will tell you more about that later on, will have a practice note. And this is the second point I really want to stress. First point is we will be scaling high impact services, which is great. The second point is by standardizing them, we will capture them in practice notes. We will describe what they are and what other countries need to do, the steps literally. If you want this, this is what you need to do. We will make things easier for you. We will make things faster for you because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We will make them cheaper because it's faster, right? Lower labor cost to design services, and a lot of time goes into our service design. Do not underestimate that. If you have to start from scratch, it takes a lot of time. And third, it is higher quality because it has been designed and vetted by specialists in these particular fields, like humanitarian booking hub or gender responsive procurement. I know gender and I know procurement. But if you have to design that for yourself, it's going to take a long time, that service. So by having specialists develop those services, the quality of the service itself actually goes up because they have been designed exactly right. And not all countries have the right skill sets or the expertise at hand in the country. So we're helping you by doing that centrally. Most of these services are what Zamir will call highly recommended, which means they have a star in the system that we will strongly recommend to include them unless there are strong reasons not to, because they've proven impact, right? So today I'm going to show you first some data of what we see in early days. Okay, keep in mind we're still not completely done with the BOSS implementation development. Very soon we will be, but we're not there yet. But we wanted to share with you stuff already and give you an insight of how this would work. So next slide, please. Each of the topics you saw on the previous slides has its own webinar, right? You saw that in the invite. So if we look a little bit, what are the high impact common services? It's a bit of a pyramid shape. If you can give a couple of enters, Diego, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you. A cup of coffee. It is 8 a.m. So it is 3 levels of what we're trying to achieve here. One of them is good practices. So again, there's a lot of good service already out there. I've been in the system for almost 20 years. I was struck by, man, there's a lot of, either at headquarters or at country level, there's so many good initiatives going on that I could use as a deputy when I was in the field or wherever I sit, that I think I could use these services. I just didn't know they were there. So a lot of entities have good practices. We made an initial selection that you saw on the previous slide of services where UNICEF and UN Women and WFP speak. Sorry, not UNICEF this round, but WFP and UN Women and Secretariat in this case, they speak about their services. But I want to stress that this is open. This is an ongoing webinar series. So any entity that has services that they say, hey, this works for others, we can scale this and we want to talk about this, they can write to Zamir and the team and they will include it in this webinar series. So this is not a one-off thing, and anybody, if it has proven concept. So we will look at, okay, is this ready to go? And is this good for the rest of the system? It's not going to be a talk shop. It must be concrete and applied. Second and third, as you can see here, as I already mentioned, the services, they either improve the quality or reduce the cost. Those are the only criteria there, because these are the BOSS criteria, right? We're not going to waste people's time if we cannot demonstrate that these services somehow have an impact on either of these two and can be scaled across the globe. And colleagues, this is the beauty of the BOSS framework. It has, in my eyes, it has many advantages. It takes a bit of time to design it. But the beauty of the BOSS framework is that it allows scaling of services at scale in 131 countries at the same time. Will all 131 countries do it? Probably not. But it is very easy to push it to and easily get to 50, 60, 70 services in across the globe. And that's a power that the BOSS framework brought, apart from the whole data analytics and the actual reduction of cost or quality. The scalability and the instruments to scale are very important as well. Next slide, please. So I'll give you a little bit, I just talked about the objectives and benefits. I'll give you a little bit of insights on the methodology as well as the results from the New York University and DCO UNSDG analysis. Let's go on, Diego. Diego, next slide, please. Okay, just give a couple of answers that the slide fills out. That would be great. So the whole point of this scaling is that all of you have done your bosses now. You know what locally makes sense for you. As I said already, we want to standardize the services further. You almost get an off-shelf product, right? You take the product, you take the practice note, you're sitting in your OMT, you take this practice note and you adapt it, you localize it. According to our estimates, we will cut off 40 to 60% of the labor time by doing this. If you have a standardized product to work from, you just have to fit it with your local data and with your local setup, or tweak it if you wish. So that is definitely one of them. By scaling the services that have maximum impact, we hope also to channel the OMT capacity, which is not unlimited, towards services that have demonstrated high impact in terms of cost avoidance. So we can help the OMT prioritize the work. Like, listen, these services in most countries across the world, they have cut services, they've cut cost by this much. So it is a prioritization effort as well that maximizes cost reductions. Third, it is, and this is a narrative I personally really want to start pushing push more. We already are pushing it in the training of trainers. Business ops has links to development. It is not a back office thing. It is not like we're sitting in the basement and doing stuff and then the program colleagues are going out and are changing the world. No. Well, yes, I mean, that is one of the things we do. But another impact is that by designing our business operations right, we have direct social impact colleagues. I mean, you think about the renewables, by shifting our whole buildings and showing within a country proof of concept, we are massively, significantly reducing our carbon footprint, in particular with these microgrid solutions around the building. The line between program and ops blurs. When we do gender responsive procurement, the volumes of our procurement, if we channel that through its companies or corporations that are women-led, that have policies in place that promote women's equality, and we channel part of our procurement volumes towards those companies, we're spending millions directly in gender equality. I have seen countries where this actually outstrips the actual program. So that is SDG integration. That is social impact. Disabilities. We will talk about this more. If you integrate the disability recruitment, the physical access, but also digital access in our UN setup, we have a colleagues, can you please mute your microphones? Samir, can you master mute, please?
The prediction from 3D.
Thank you. So we have a direct impact on the situation. We are empowering people with disabilities, their families, economically and in life. So these are all examples how business operations has a direct impact on social, on a direct social impact on the development situation in the country. And although a lot of people have that narrative, I would love to see more of our business operations specialists in our system, meaning you, to see that and also drive that forwards. In many cases, it's also the UN walking the talk, demonstrating that operations can actually have that impact. If you have a building that is completely solar powered, it shows to the country and to the companies, the corporation, the private sector in that country, to the government, like, man, we can do this. If they can do it, we can do it. And then our program colleagues can help support them, right, through the renewable energy program. So these are just some examples. But this is very, very important. The social impact is a quality factor in our business ops, and to me, something that we should be proud of. Last but not least, we will use the system-wide data to scale good practices. So again, we will continuously assess the impact of our services through the BOS. We will look at the cost avoidance. We will look at social impact. And hey, for some services, it may sound great. It's just not working the way we intended it to be. That's useful information too. Because we will say, like, listen, this has been tested. If you want to test it, go ahead, but we would recommend against it because it has been tested 3, 4, 5 times. It's just very difficult to lift, which means you get to spend your time on stuff that actually matters, right? So we're talking much more about value-added services of the BOS. Next slide, please. So we will look at the assessment, and the New York University looked at the qualitative and the quantitative analysis. based on the BOSS online platform data. So we looked at Rwanda, Ethiopia, Jordan, Ukraine, and Vietnam. Again, that report is out. I would recommend you take a look at that. Then we have agency good practices. I already mentioned it. For now, it's WFP, UNDP, and UN Women, as well as the Secretariat. Other entities are more than welcome to present their things, provided they have a broader impact. It must be interagency, right? Not just for this agency, with a plan on how we can scale this to countries. So we want to avoid that this just becomes individual entities presenting on their own services. We need that link to the rest of the system. We've benchmarked most of the cost avoidances and use the BOSS tools basically at our disposal. And we also look at how many countries are using a certain service. It may be that a certain service doesn't necessarily have a high cost avoidance, but a lot of countries are actually using it, which shows there's an incredibly strong demand. So in that case, we will reverse the order. We will say, okay, fine, it seems a lot of countries are working on this or seem to have a demand for this, and we will design the concept notes. Not necessarily because there is one particular impact, but or cost avoidance impact, I should say. But if a country says, like, listen, this is just a quality of life service we have been running, might not be very flashy, but it still adds a lot of value. We might still pick it up in a standardized common service note. So these common service practice notes are key. This is what you ask for. This is where we'll outline to you, this is how it works for renewable energy, for general responsive procurement, for disabilities. And we will organize the webinars around that. Next slide, please. So let me show you some actual data. I'm slightly behind time. So pros and cons, just give a couple of answers if you don't mind, Diego, so we can see the whole slide. So the scaling, the challenges we did, and the New York team, New York University team, and our teams of the UNSDG did have, is of course, this was in the middle of the transition, right? I did want to look at it. Some countries had very early transition. They have very strong teams on the ground. So data collection, you always have to be a bit careful with that. Is the data correct at that stage? At this point, I think we're close to 80 to 90 countries on the BOSS, so the data is much richer. So it is also about projected data in the BOSS. So projections, you have to take that. It's very useful to have projections, but you have to take that accordingly. Projections are not real yet. This is what you think you can do. You will do if everything goes as you planned, right? As we go along and BOSSes get implemented, this will actually be replaced by actual data. So doing high impact common services based on projected data is useful. It will give you an initial sense, but you need to be careful with it because the actual impact has not materialized yet. So we will need to continue monitoring that and adapt practice notes if the actual implementation is slightly different. I already talked about the opportunities. It's the scaling. It is helping you prioritize your labor to focus on things with lower costs and higher quality. And it will help with the reporting. Next slide, please. So if you look at the data, sorry for this long intro, colleagues. This is the first time we're running this webinar, so we're also finding our narrative. Do feel free, by the way, to tell us if you think this webinar can be tweaked or should be done slightly different, so we can also make it better. We do value your input. If you look at the actual data, now what service lines are actually generating the most impact? Now, as you can see, it's by far admin. This has been the trend for a while, for a couple of years actually. You have 11 services on the admin that represent 44% of the impact. You got some ICT services followed by finance. HACT is a big one there. And then you see HR, logistics, and procurement. I personally think logistics will go up. I'm a huge fan of the logistics and mobility services. I do think having the joint fleet management locally will have large impact. I also think managing that through a modern app or something would make sense. But this is the living nature of this document. If that is the case, we will test it for certain countries and see whether it works. And WFP and the UNHCR, for example, are working on a solution already, and we'll present that to you at some point. What is surprising to me about this, I would have expected procurement to be much larger. And I asked yesterday my team about this, like where has procurement? Why is it only 4%? And Zamir might pick up on this a little bit later. The reason for this is that when you do procurement, it is driven by the LTAs, right? The use of LTAs is a major benefit source. Like you're getting.
Lars, apologies. Yeah. Can you slow down a little bit, because we have been getting messages from colleagues that you're going very fast. Sorry for that.
My apologies, colleagues.
It's okay. It's very, very, very quickly. Please, slowly.
Okay, my apologies, colleagues. I actually had the same 3 days ago with Francophone colleagues and completely forgot that I should slow down a little bit there. So appreciate the feedback. That's fine. I'll go a little bit slower.
Too much coffee?
Not enough coffee, probably. So on the procurement bit, I was surprised. I would have expected to see procurement as the largest category. After all, this is where the LTAs sit, which is easily one of the largest categories. The reason why procurement is lower is because if you do procurement and you use an LTA, say for hotels and conferences or for ICT, laptops or whatever it is, the benefit actually gets allocated to that service line. So if it's procurement for ICT, the benefit sits in the ICT category, not the procurement category. It is the way it is categorized in the BOSS platform. That is not good and that's not bad. It's just something you need to be aware of. So that's why procurement is relatively smaller, because it gives its value to ICT and finance and admin, the areas where it supports. So I hope that's a little bit clear. Next slide, please, Samir. So this slide shows you a little bit concretely what services now are really doing well. The bigger the box, the bigger the benefit. Yeah, the colors indicate what service line they're from, and the size of the box is the size of the benefit. So you see here on the admin services, I'm colorblind. I'm told on the left it's blue. Common administration services, as it says it. It is security is a big one. Security services outsourcing. So this is probably an example where we're leveraging contracts and pooling contracts. So actually it ties in nicely with what I was just saying about procurement. Common premises management, this is facility management, integration, consolidation of the services such as pouch, reception, building management, all these things together is a big category. We knew that. This is also being pushed under the common back offices to integrate it. Travel services, local travel, conference and events management, accommodation services is an absolute no-brainer for me, hotels, conferences, that kind of thing. Printing, vehicle maintenance, these are all examples under the administration services that have high projected impact. Remember what I said about projected impact. This could change as actual data comes through, but for now, these are the services that seem to have very high cost avoidance. We're talking a cost. We're coming back to quality in a moment. Common procurement services, utilization of LTAs. This was the earliest service line out there, so that's not a surprise. On ICT services, you see internet connectivity and VSATs, mobile phone services and contracts, maintenance contracts. Help desk to me is a one-on-one service. I was serving in a small to mid-sized country, and we had fairly small program value, and we still had 6 different help desks. In this time where money becomes scarce, we are not at liberty. We should not have a duplication of service like that. A singular help desk, integrated help desk support, at least level 1, is an entry-level service under the BOSS. I think that should be made mandatory, but that's always difficult in the UN. And I'm sure the opinions differ on that one. Finance, foreign exchange. Rwanda is a huge example of this. What they do is for foreign exchange services, they set up a joint foreign exchange service where they source quotes from both inside the UN and outside the UN. They do that on an extremely regular basis. And they use the Forex with the best day quote. As you know, foreign exchange is highly volatile, right? The capital markets move every day, sometimes quite radically. The more insecurity, the more movement. So the best supplier for the exchange currency may be different. Today it may be this bank, next time it may be that bank, or UN Central. So they use that system to generate a significant amount. I may stand to be corrected, but I think just for Rwanda at the time, it has been a while since I last heard for it, but they were talking about 14 million, which is quite significant. Not all entities can do this, but it is a very interesting service. And one I hope to explore in a standardized service node, because that service is actually evaluated already. It has been up and running for quite a while. Common HR services, the web rosters and consultants. This one generates labor benefit, colleagues. It is, for example, when I scaled my team in DCO, I had a whole list of people who were shortlisted for posts. Not all of them made it in. But if we felt like they were actually doing pretty well and they deserve a shot, they were added to a roster. And I actually shared the roster today. Tomorrow we have interviews for a UNFPA post for the boss. And they look at those rosters as well. So you don't have to redo the whole thing. And people that proven themselves in the interview quite well, just unfortunate for them, they had a bad day or there was a colleague who was better. It just defeated them in the interview. It allows you to quickly pick up people that actually could be very good. So it's a labor gain and a quality gain, time, right? Hacked seems quite large. Logically, if Hacked is done properly, there are quite a few advantages, both in the macro and the micro assessments, as well as sourcing, the support for that regards, and last, harmonized customs clearance. I'm going over the details because this is what this webinar is supposed to do. We're not talking here boss high level. We're talking about very concrete, what services now actually make sense. Here you see some of those services. Again, the report talks more about this. Next slide, please. Zamir, please guide me. I'm kind of not entirely sure about the time. I think I'm at half an hour now, and I know you have some slides, so tell me if I need to accelerate. And colleagues, bear with us. This is the first time we're doing this webinar, so I just want to make sure it goes. You get the maximum out of this.
I think we should be fine, Lars.
Okay, excellent. So some more examples what the analysis shows. For in the administration service line, some examples, right? Again, these are projected numbers, colleagues. I'm sorry, I will keep repeating it. In the admin service line, security services, management of premises, travel, conference, accommodation services, hotels and stuff like that, printing and publication, and vehicle management. I really think vehicle management can be much larger. I think some countries are maybe daunted by the exactly how to do this, which again is a reason why we would standardize it and design it centrally for you, which you then just have to localize. But anyway, you see the projected cost avoidance over the cycle of the BOSS. This is not annual. Some of you chose for a BOSS over 3 to 5 years. A BOSS doesn't have a fixed cycle anymore, right? So some have 3 years, some have 5 years. So you have to look at that 158 million over 3 to 5 years. You also see on the right total number of users. It's actually not users. It's the number of times that the service is being used. So 23 countries, 18 countries, 39 countries. Well, can you please mute your microphone? Ali, can you please, would you be so kind to mute your microphone, please? Thank you. So you see here, the service with the highest frequency is travel. So most countries pick that up. The one with the lowest frequency here is the vehicle management and the management of common premises. Management of common premises will be rolled into the CBO rollout, so we hope to push it there. But you still see that the numbers, even though the frequency, not many countries might be using it, the numbers are quite high. Well, at least for common premises. So you see all kinds of interesting data for this kind of analysis. And again, the report tells you more details. Next slide, please. I'm not going to take you over all the services. They are huge. I would recommend you take a look for yourself. But we wanted to give you a flavor of some of the other services that you saw on the previous graph. What the numbers are that you're looking at. The Forex is actually 9 million here. So I guess I was off with my previous statement that Rwanda did 14 million. Maybe that wasn't all the previous cycle. Banking services and charges. So a lot of countries are renegotiating their bank contracts using their volumes to reduce the bank charges. The web processing consultants, these are labor gains largely. Visa and internet connectivity, integration of Visa is another one. Another one that colleagues that have been in the field and in the UN system for a while It used to impress me. Now it irritates me when I come to a premises and you have like I've been to premises where you had like 16 VSETs standing. Everybody having their own dedicated VSETs. So a lot of countries are now moving on consolidating their VSETs and then still have 1 or 2 or 3 backups or specialized VSETs for those entities who need those. But you see that being picked up quite a bit. Mobile phone contracts and utilization of LTAs. So yeah, these are some of the flavors that you could expect. Next slide. Now here, I actually kind of front loaded this. This is my favorite slide because it doesn't say anything, so I can say whatever I like. On SDGs and good practices, I'm not going to go into depth on this again, but I really, and we stress this in the trainings, I think in the ops world, we always see ourselves as support to program, and we are. That's our primary function. Our job is to make sure that our program colleagues can deliver their program. But the second line of impact is our own direct impact on the development status in the country. We are development practitioners just like anybody else. And by using the tools at our disposal, and they're called procurement, and they are called recruitment, and they are called, well, fill in the blanks under the boss, we can build these tools to have direct impact. And I've asked Samir and the team and asked the chairs of the task teams under the UNSDG to prioritize gender responsive procurement, climate action, renewable energy, and disabilities. And why? We will go into the webinar into detail, but colleagues, if you imagine this, you have a UN building. And when I walk into any UN building, where are the people with disabilities? Where are the people in the wheelchairs or the blind sitting there who can perfectly do a job, who are just as empowered and equipped as we are? They just happen to have a sensory disability, for example. So I would, under the disability program, we're pushing the recruitment very specifically by engaging NGOs and CSOs working with people with disabilities. The problem often is, for example, when you recruit in that area that you can't reach the audience. People with disabilities are often stigmatized within their own communities, which means they themselves don't see themselves as candidates for your job. Even if you say, no, but you are, they've been hearing their whole life, you're not. So part of the empowerment is establishing the trust in themselves that people with disabilities, for example, that when you talk about recruitment, that they can do this job just as anybody else, even better if they want to. So the practice notes outlines the engagement of the CSOs, the civil society organizations, and NGOs working with people with disabilities. And when we recruit in particular G-level posts, we route the recruitment through those organizations. So that is step one, to actually hit the target audience we need to hit, that people see it. And within those organizations, those are working with people with disabilities, they know. They will tell them, you can do this. Of course you can do this. You can be economically empowered and feed your family, contribute to your family. You can be actually contributing to society and working like anybody else. So we will engage them and increase the people with a disability that actually apply. But we also train them on CV writing through those CSOs, NGOs, on CV writing and interview techniques. Because keep in mind, if you've been ostracized your whole life, if you've been locked into a room your whole life, which in some of the cases is exactly what's happening, you probably are not very good in interviewing techniques. You're going to be nervous and you're going to probably mess up the interview, even if it's a very simple interview. So you help them with mock interviews and how to interview. Anything to empower them to come to the interview and be competitive like the rest of us. So that is, for example, the disability services. And I get asked many times when I brief the DSG or the USGs or the ASGs, okay, what does success look like? One of those questions you get. Okay, fine. What for me success looks like if I walk into a building and I see at the reception a person who's blind, then we have had success. Because that tells the world that within it's not just for us. I think as a UN, we have an ethical obligation as an organization. To me, that's a no-brainer. But it tells the world that these people can be productive and can be economically contributing and socially contributing. Everybody who enters our building will see that and get that message. That is power of leverage, and the UN has that leverage. So that is disabilities. One example of social impact Is it going to save us money? No, it won't. I mean, you need to train people with disabilities. It's tiny, tiny money. You need to train them. So it's not going to save us money, but this will change lives very directly. And I would love to walk into a building that has people with physical disabilities or sensory disabilities and see them there as our champions. Same for renewable energy. You're glad you're building in solar power panels. Everybody who drives by the road and sees all the solar panels there, it's like, damn, this can be done. I'm an entrepreneur. I would like to see that as well. Got a lot of power, get a lot of power cuts. I can do that too. It's the power of our example. It's the power of the UN showing that it can be done. That social impact, and disabilities and environment are two. Gender sensitive procurement is a powerhouse. I mean, if we start wheeling up procurement volumes properly, we can make a change, and you can make a change, and you can do that through your boss. Okay, I think I see Zamir switching around to deck quite a bit, so that's usually a sign like hand over to the next one. So I'm probably eating into his time right now. Yeah, I am. With that, colleagues, thank you very much. Have a good day. Do give us your feedback in the chat on the webinar, whether you feel it's useful, whether we need to adapt it, because we're going to have a lot of these. So I prefer you telling us if you don't like something, we'll adapt it. And I sincerely hope to see you in the future in one of our specialist webinars on each of these services, which you saw in the invite. Over to you, Zamir.
Thank you, Lars. Can you confirm that you can hear me? Can you confirm that you hear me?
I hear you twice, so your message is definitely landing.
Okay, that's great. You should be hearing me better now.
Zamir, you have an echo.
Great. Apologies, colleagues, for a lot of mess up today. This is the first time it happens in our webinars. Apparently, a lot of people have access to UN.org Teams link, and different people started links of upcoming webinars at the same time. So many colleagues had to be redirected. But anyway, I'll let you know how to join the upcoming webinars. Going forward on what do we need to do? What are the recommendations for the process? We have been working with different agencies, as well as we're looking into the BOSS online platform and the existing bosses to see which common services have been used recurrently, which ones are bringing impact and higher impact in terms of cost avoidance or quality improvement. And in the BOSS online platform, we have been tagging these common service as recommended services. So basically, when your operations management teams are trying to develop their BOSS or reviewing their BOSS in the online platform, they will see that certain common services in the list of the the proposed services that you have in the webinar, and the list of the services that you have in the BOSS online platform, some of them are marked as recommended, which means these are highly recommended common services, either because they have a high impact in terms of cost avoidance or quality improvement, or there is a social impact attached to these common services. And that means that the UNSDG Task Team on Business Operations highly recommend these services for scaling in all the UN country teams. For the very specific services that we'll be talking about, particularly the disability and inclusion common services, the solar energy or efficient energy or sustainable energy, whatever that you would call it more conveniently, and as well as services such as fleet management, joint sharing of resources and all. We will be developing, and we are going to have in the coming days, dedicated webinars where the experts in this area will be talking to you on a very specific topic, let's say on disability and inclusion in the BOSS, fleet sharing, accommodation sharing, let's say scaling the sustainable energy in your offices. We'll have very dedicated webinars on this in the coming weeks. The schedule has been shared in an email with you. I'll be sharing it with you again now. And these recommended common services are also supported by a very simple and easy to understand 4 to 5 page practice notes, so that if you are selecting a common service in the BOSS platform, let's say a common service on a sharing fleet that is recommended, it will be linked to a 4 or 5 pages practice note and understand what is this common service about, what kind of investment does your UNCT need to put in place for this common service, who is your dedicated support team in case if you want to implement this common service in your country, how can you get help. Let's say a lot of us would like to ensure that our offices are accessible to persons with disabilities, but we might make mistakes. I have made mistakes myself that I might have basically made a restroom accessible while there is no ramp for a person with disability to walk into my office, or my meeting room is not accessible for him or her to be able to understand us in the same way as we speak. So there is a dedicated expert team from the UN agencies, as well as from the external networks, from the private sector that we have engaged with, and they will remain standby to support you in implementation of the high impact common services. So your first approach will be the webinars, then you can see the practice notes, and then when you select the common service for your country for implementation, a dedicated support team will be there to support you at any point of time that you may have questions. So speaking of the dedicated webinars that are coming up, in the coming week, we are having the Humanitarian Booking Hub webinar with WFP. This is a common service, a good practice that WFP has piloted and implemented in majority of the countries. I believe it's over 60 or 80 countries that are already utilizing services of the UN Humanitarian Booking Hub. Within this, we have 3 key common services. One is fleet sharing and fleet management. Another one is UN accommodation sharing, which is guest house management, and then the clinic management. So each of them are high quality impact and high cost avoidance impact common services that we will be talking about it in more detail with our WFP colleagues in the coming days. Then we have gender responsive procurement, a common service that has already been in the BOSS platform. This It's led by the by UN Women on behalf of the UNSDG, and we will have a dedicated webinar with our UN Women colleagues where they will explain to you how can you make gender responsive procurement a key common service in your country. Disability and inclusion is specific common services in the areas of operation. Focuses on physical accessibility so that you make sure your offices become accessible. Focuses on okay, now somebody is trying to take over my slides. The disability and inclusion is focusing on physical accessibility, on accessibility or inclusion in the recruitment process, as well as digital accessibility, and in here again, we have colleagues from the Office of the Secretary General task team that is looking into implementation of the disability and inclusion in the coming days. Colleagues, please stop taking screenshots. It's making a mess here at my end at the presentation. And then we will also have energy efficiency webinars. Okay, colleagues, we'll have webinars on green energy or energy efficiency, and then there's another webinar on sustainable cafeteria in the coming days. And colleagues, in order to avoid what is happening right now and what happened today, to mix up the links, I strongly suggest that you click on the link that has been sent to you in the email invite that might have come to you from iris.service@undp.org. This is the bulk message that is coming from the BOSS online platform. Please click on the link that is specific to that particular webinar. I understand the Microsoft Team link is open to all UN.org users. So a lot of colleagues have been today have been like opening the links that are for the future days, and that has slightly mixed up our webinar today. So once you have these common services, you might have a question that I have already had my business operation strategy developed and it has been completed. What can I do if these common services are not in my BOS? Can I include it right away? Include it right away may not be a possibility, but all the bosses have a cycle of 12 to 18 months for review. So if your boss has been completed just recently in December and you are going to initiate implementation of all the common services that the UNCTs has agreed in your boss, proceed with that, and upon review of the boss, then focus on mapping and identifying the high impact common services, and we will work with you to make sure that your review of the BOS includes the high impact common services. There is a number of countries that are still in finalization of their BOSes. They're still having the opportunity to include new common services. So for them, this opportunity remains there. Stay with us in the upcoming webinars, understand the high impact common services better, and then please include these common services in your BOS in this cycle if possible. If not, then it will be coming up in the review. So let me stop here, colleagues. We still have a little bit of time to take a few specific questions, but do remember that we're going to have very dedicated sessions on these, at least on these 5 high impact common services areas, which includes several common services in the BOS. So let me stop here and see if you have any particular question. Please do raise your hand or write down your question in the chat box, and one of the colleagues will be reverting to you. Okay, so I can see that Charles Luleka, I hope I didn't mispronounce your name, has his hands raised. Charles, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. Host, thanks, Lars, for this presentation. We appreciate. One thing that I'm trying to look at it, I know BOS is a baby of the ONT members, including the task force, respective task forces, and the UNCT. However, I've seen we can do more in the area of BOS if we really work the show together with our program management team or the program working groups, because that is where most of the resources sit for program development, for program implementation. We'll achieve a lot. But if we do all this BOS, we limit ourselves on the operational budget that we have, then we are not driving this high scale, whatever high impact that we try to achieve. Then let's try to see how we can do it better in that context of getting everybody on board to run BOS. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Let's take the questions from Usman and then Anita, and then we'll get back to you. Usman.
Yep. Thank you very much, Zamir and team, for this excellent presentation on these high impact services. And I'll second Charles and add what Charles has said on the implementation of BOS. I think I just have a comment on this common services and assessing the premises in terms of these locations are accessible to people with disability and more jobs are offered to these persons. So as in the presentation, it was suggested to engage with national NGOs, civil society organizations. So is there any best practice that we can follow? Engaging with these civil society organizations and NGOs requires some kind of MOUs that we need to enter. And for this, we absolutely need program team support, because it is widely understood that BOS is a document for operations team, and I think in this part we also need some support from the program management team. So if this is already implemented in any of the countries, can we have some example of best practices, how this is being followed because when we try to engage these NGOs, they will definitely look for some kind of appreciation or incentive in terms of appreciation that UN will provide them, and then we also get some information how many persons with disabilities were trained on their skills of developing CV. So how this reporting will be done in BOS, and how we will engage with CSOs, this is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Usman. Anita?
Yes, Amir. In fact, I would just wanted to go back to the previous questions regarding to ownership of the BOS by the UN country team and the UN by the OMT. Maybe it will be useful to share the practice in our country, North Macedonia, especially for my UN agency, which is UNHCR. What we have done, in fact, from the first day of the creation of the BOS, it was to involve all staff, not only program, because we quickly realized that only the OMT cannot contribute to its progress, development, and achievement. So what we are in fact doing right now, we have started to brief all staff, to organize briefing for all staff, because in various areas of the BOS, different staff, ICT especially, procurement, even the drivers can contribute to proper implementation. So what we are doing is organizing a series of briefing regarding the strategy, including a follow-up on this presentation that I'm attending, and this is why I would be very grateful to receive the presentation, the slides, which will be discussed with all staff in our operation. So I believe that that is the only way for this initiative to succeed.
Many thanks, Anita. Indeed, it is important to ensure all the colleagues, all the key stakeholders in our offices and outside our office are engaged in our work to ensure that the common services that are identified in the BOS are implemented. Let me quickly confirm, colleagues, that we have been briefing the UN country team members. We have been briefing the resident coordinators, like through dedicated webinars and engagements. We have been talking to our colleagues who are leading the resident coordinator office, the heads of the RCOs. Many of them are in this call, and the operations management teams, as well as program management teams to the extent possible. Our message to all of these colleagues have been very specific, that the operational collaboration will not be a success if it's only run by the operations teams, because despite the fact that our operations colleagues are very strong in the area of their work, they do need the support of our program colleagues to understand better the programmatic approach, or the programmatic let's say plans for the office in implementation of your cooperation framework, or whatever UN mandate to have for your agency in that country. So the program colleagues engagement is really necessary in all of your discussions while developing your BOS, reviewing their BOS, or implementing your BOS, because the source of the common services that you're identifying in your BOS should either be for your day-to-day business need, which means that you can decide on that. You know that better as operations managers, because you would be knowing what are the business requirements for day-to-day management of your office are. But then the rest of your operational collaborations should be based on the program implementation, based on the fact that where your program is going, which subnational locations you're going to scale your program implementation, where you could do collaboration and all, and what are the areas that where you could basically implement these particular common services. Let's say energy efficiency. Under the energy efficiency, you will see that we are recommending a common service which is for home-based energy equipment, like solar systems that can be utilized. I mean, in the BOS, we're thinking about staff in the very specific complex countries where they have lack of electricity, and then our office will have to buy the generator and all. But these projects can always be scaled into national level for program interventions as well. Similarly, gender responsive procurement directly contributes to your work in the area of gender and equality, so that's another linkage with the program. So we can't stress more that engagement of your program colleagues in the process of developing the BOS, implementation and the review of the BOS is key. I think if what you have right now in your business operations strategy, if this is implemented efficiently, I'm sure there would be further engagement from your colleagues, and your senior teams know this. Feel free to engage with them in case if you don't see a good response or a good engagement from your program teams in your BOS process. And our champion in this process is also the heads of the RCO teams, the RCO team leaders. So talk to them to bridge this communication. When it comes to Usman's question on the practice notes or let's say experience of other agencies, countries that may have implemented certain high impact common services, we definitely do have practices, Usman. When we run the specific webinars on these common services in the coming days, review resources of which agency in which countries have had implemented these common services, and they are successful with this. But at the same time, as I mentioned, we have this dedicated support work from the UN and outside of the UN that will be able to share with you best practices. The practice notes that will be uploaded in the BOS platform in the coming days already have a guideline of, let's say, if you are going to proceed into let's say implementing physical accessibility in your premises, what do you need to have as a priority? Do you have to start with the restrooms or with your meeting rooms or with the entrance or with the equipment? So there is like a prioritization of these phases. There is like it's even categorized in different phases or stages of implementation. Similarly for gender responsive procurement or fleet management or green energy services. So please join us in the upcoming webinars on these dedicated common services, and we'll share with you more and more information. And that actually also feeds to what Anita mentioned, that you will need to promote these common services and the work of your business operations team throughout the office, so they understand what you're doing and they know the value of what you're doing, so that you can be joined by their efforts and implementation of your BOS. I'll stop here, colleagues. I know we we must have a lot of other questions as well, but we'll be happy to take maybe subject specific or common service specific questions in the upcoming webinars. Again, requesting you to join the right link in the coming webinars. The very first one on the humanitarian booking hub, where the WFP colleagues will be talking about sharing, the clinic sharing, and the accommodation management is coming up on the 21st of January. It's again Thursday, not Tuesday. I think that's a typo there. But please do click on the right link so that we can have you in the right forum for the discussion. So let me see if Lars has any final comments. Otherwise, I think we can conclude this webinar today in here. And we'll hope to see you in the upcoming sessions. Lars?
Colleagues, can you hear me? Zamir, can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you.
Okay, I was trying to come in a little bit earlier. The colleagues on the program engagement, we're really out of time, so we need to wrap this up. But in the guidance notes for the CBO or for the BOSS rollout, it has specifically how, when, and how to engage programmatic colleagues throughout the BOSS design process. So when the BOSS gets finalized, the OMT and the program colleagues usually would meet, where the operations colleagues outline, like, listen, this is what the BOSS intends to aim at. And program colleagues can say, like, listen, this is where we feel enhanced operational support could add further value. So there's 2 points of engagement early on in the process. When you start your BOSS, although for many of them that teams that ship has sailed, and at the end of the BOSS process. So this is where the OMT says, like, listen, we're doing this renewable energy thing, or we're working with gender as responsive procurement, and this is where you establish the linkages between the program and the ops. Because where this effectively lands is you can easily collaborate with the program teams there because you have the same objectives, right? Women's empowerment, or renewables. But look at the guidance notes. We're also happy to talk more about that. Should that be a topic where you want to talk a little bit more, like how does it work? What kind of examples do you have? Then write to Zamir or Diego and we can organize a webinar around that. I think right now we're out of time. I think a lot of the questions did get answered in the chat. I'm sure you have other meetings coming up, or your working day comes to an end. I want to thank you for joining us here and for bearing with us while we work out the kinks in this first meeting. We look forward to seeing you in the dedicated webinars on individual services, where a lot of the technical questions will get answered. If you have suggestions for topics, write to Zamir and Diego. We can look into those and see what you want to hear and see what we can organize around those to get the knowledge and the expertise flowing and exchanged across the system so we can scale the BOSS to its full potential. It is an exciting time. Thank you very much, colleagues, and enjoy your day or your evening. Bye.
Thank you very much, colleagues. All the very best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.